Welcome into another edition of MPW Digital Extra, presented by Rustic Revivals Furniture Company. I'm Neal McCready. Today on the show, we get you ready for Oklahoma at Ole Miss, another weekend in the SEC and in the National Football League. With the trio of guests, we've got Blake Toppmeyer, covers college football for USA Today and Gannett. We'll talk about Ole Miss. We'll talk about some of the Rebels' recent struggles, their path forward. Does he think Ole Miss can be a college football playoff team? We talk about the rest of the SEC landscape and more. I think you'll enjoy a visit with Blake, one of the really good guys in college football media. Then we'll get to one of the funniest guys in college football media. Eddie Radosovich covers Oklahoma for Soonerscoop.com. It's part of the On3 network. Eddie, formerly of Rivals, known Eddie for a long time. Really one of the good dudes in this business. He'll be in Oxford. It's the Sooners' first ever trip to Vaught-Hemingway. Ole Miss and Oklahoma played once before on the last day of 1999 in Shreveport in the Independence Bowl, a game that Ole Miss won on a last-second kick. This is only the second meeting ever between Ole Miss and Oklahoma, so we'll talk about that game and Oklahoma's struggles in the SEC and more. We'll do that, and then we'll have our weekly visit with Ben Mintz of Barstool Sports. Talk about the Rebels and Sooners, the rest of the SEC slate, some other national games, and we'll take you through what I guess is week 8 in the National Football League. All of that brought to you each and every week by our friends at Rustic Revivals, based out of Flowood, Mississippi. Rustic Revivals builds tables and other furniture by hand with locally sourced lumber. The husband and wife team of Josh and Ashley Pierce specialize in custom-ordered tables, beds, dressers, coffee tables, bookshelves, decorative cabinets, and chairs. They have a limited selection of ready-for-pickup pieces available in their store. They deliver within 250 miles of Flowood, so all that's there. You can get 20% off now. They've increased the discount to 20% off with the code REBELS20. That's REBELS20. The QR code right there on the YouTube stream. You can also go to rusticrevivalsms.com, enter that code. You can go to facebook.com /Rustic Revivals, or you can go to Rustic Revivals on Instagram. You can also order directly by calling 228-217-1243, 228-217-1243, or you can email rusticrevivals@gmail.com. I'm coming to you from the Clark Ford Studios. Clark Ford's in Amory, Mississippi. You guys know the drill by now. 662-257-1900. Let Corey and the people at Clark Ford help you with your next purchase. And, of course, all guests join on the Campbell Clinic hotline. And without further ado, we go to the Campbell Clinic hotline and Blake Toppmeyer of USA Today. Blake Toppmeyer does a great job covering SEC, national college football for USA Today. Gannett, that outfit does really tremendous work. I talked to him about a Alabama story a couple of weeks ago when Alabama had lost one game. And now Alabama's lost 2 games, so we'll probably touch about Alabama in a moment. First, Blake, thanks for spending some time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good talking to you, Neal.
Let's start with Ole Miss. Most of my audience watching this is Ole Miss fans. So we'll start there. What have been your thoughts on Ole Miss? I know you were in Baton Rouge on a couple weeks ago, and I thought your Twitter timeline was fascinating to go back and look at, because early in that game, you're like, Ole Miss is dominating this game. This game should be a lot more lopsided on the scoreboard than it is, and I agreed with you, by the way. And then as the second half rolled around, you know the rest. LSU came back, forced overtime, won the game in overtime. It's turned out to be a bit of a launching pad maybe for LSU moving forward. They dominated Arkansas Saturday and Fayetteville, and Ole Miss, meanwhile, seems to be sort of stuck in depression mode in the aftermath of LSU as they get ready for a stretch run where they probably can't afford to lose another game.
Yeah, it felt like, as we were covering the Ole Miss LSU game throughout the first quarter, it just felt like this is going to come back to bite Ole Miss, because they dominated, as you know, that first quarter. I think the yardage differential, if I remember correctly, was like 142-39, and Ole Miss really should have been up 17-0 after that quarter, and instead it was 0-0. And you've covered that game more than I have, but I've covered it enough to know like strange things happen in the Magnolia Bowl, right? And so you knew coming out of that first quarter when they didn't take advantage, it's like, I think this could come back around in the second half. And yet my eyes were telling me all first half, like Ole Miss has a better team. They're outplaying LSU substantially, but you let a team hang around, and you give them enough chances, and finally, LSU punched through. And I felt like it sort of epitomized kind of what we've seen from Ole Miss this season, at least in the 2 games they've lost. Like, they didn't have that killer instinct. They weren't able to step on the throat. And I feel like both of those games, the defensive investments that Ole Miss made in the offseason, like, they paid off. This defense is substantially better. It's the best defense Lane Kiffin has had during his tenure. So that part worked. But when the game was on the line in both those games, the defense couldn't deliver the stop that they needed to finish off the victory. And the offense just wasn't good enough in either of those games either to carry the day. I mean, when you look at Kiffin's career, everybody talks about the quarterback development and the tempo and all that, but it does start with the run game. And I think, Henry Parrish has been good, and Ulysses Bentley, I mean, he had some big runs in that game against LSU, but I do think there probably is a little bit missing of Quinshon Judkins, but the other side of that is you don't get all of these defensive players if you're investing those NIL dollars in Judkins. So I can't say that Ole Miss made a mistake on that front because their defense is better, but they haven't been able to deliver the knockout punch when they've had teams like Kentucky and LSU on the ropes.
So I'm an NBA guy. I'm a Major League Baseball guy, and I look at this, it's interesting. It's about roster construction, and I know you know a lot of people in coaching from doing what you do on a national level, and I suspect that you sometimes sort of have these conversations. I've had this conversation with a few coaching contacts that I have, and that is, I wonder if it shows you that you just can't complete your team completely through free agency, which is essentially what the transfer portal is, right? I mean, it's just, okay, we got a hole here, a hole here, a hole here. And Ole Miss did make a decision with Quinshon Judkins that, hey, you're a giant pain in the ass off the field. The people around you are driving us nuts. You keep asking for more. See ya. And you're right, Blake. They took that money and were able to go get Princely Amonmielen and Pooh Paul and Walter Nolan and Trey Amos. And could they have gotten all of those guys and kept Quinshon Judkins at a price that he wanted? I don't know the answer to that. But it feels like they did make a decision there. And you're right. I agree with you. The running game's not the same, and his offense is so keyed on the running game. And then when you throw in an average offensive line and a quarterback who does a lot of good things but can't do everything, you're sort of asking for it. And sure enough, they've sort of just been very average and mediocre inside the SEC on offense, and it's kept them in these close games. And unlike a year ago where they won the close games, this year they've lost them.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jackson Dart, and I think that's an element of it here. And the quarterback always, gets too much criticism, too much praise. We all know that's the case. And statistically, Jackson Dart's having a very good season, and he usually does, right? And I think he is a quality SEC quarterback. And yet there are just certain guys, and we've seen it. Throughout the course of their career, there are certain guys on one end of the spectrum, like when the game is on the line, they are going to deliver the big play and put that other team away. Bryce Young comes to mind in recent history here with Alabama. Like when he won the Heisman Trophy that year, there were probably a few other quarterbacks in the country that maybe had a little bit better statistical seasons than what Young did, even though he was statistically really, really good that year. But the reason he won the Heisman was that Alabama team had no business reaching the national championship game. I mean, they got in a vice week after week after week. And Bryce Young, when it was fourth quarter time, when it was crunch time, it's like Houdini's going to put on a show here, and he's going to make sure Alabama escapes yet again.
He did it here. Was that 2022? It was one of his fourth quarter comebacks. That was one of the games that Ole Miss was about to take it, and Bryce Young said, nope.
That's exactly right. And on the other end of that spectrum is Jackson Dart, and this really isn't to bury the quarterback or put it all on the quarterback. He's a nice quarterback, but we've seen in the big games throughout his career when it's closing time, when it's the ninth inning, and you need to bring the heat and put the other team to bed. He really hasn't been able to consistently do that. And so in the absence of that, you need your defense to put it to bed, right? They have all this money invested on the defensive side of the ball. It is a better defense, and they could have got it done against Kentucky and LSU defensively. They were pretty good throughout most of those games on defense. I think better against LSU than Kentucky. I know the scores were different, but they were much different games. So many more possessions in the LSU game. So really the defense played pretty well for Ole Miss for most of the game. But when it was closing time, Jackson Dart didn't have it. The defense didn't have it, and that's how you let teams wriggle off the hook. And that's how at the end of the season you look at the stats and you say, gosh, the quarterback had such a good statistical year, but you went 9-3 or 8-4. What happened? Well, look at the close of those games. Was your quarterback, was your team able to put teams away? And this year, Jackson Dart and Ole Miss haven't been able to.
So I suspect I know your answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. Obviously, for Ole Miss to make the playoff, and this was a season that at the beginning of the year, it was playoffs or bust. I asked repeatedly the goal, anything short of playoffs, is that failure? And the consensus answer was yes. I mean, a couple of people were like, I don't know that I want to go that, there's more to it than that. But for the most part, the answer was yes. This team came back. The whole last dance thing and all that stuff was about making the playoffs. To make the playoffs, they have to win out. I assume at 10-2 with the win over Georgia, they'd probably get in given the landscape of college football. What percentage chance do you give Ole Miss of beating Oklahoma at Arkansas, Georgia at Florida, and Mississippi State to finish the season?
Oh, boy. 10%? 15%? I mean, let's just start with the Georgia game. What percentage would I have? Would I give them to win that game? I'd say less than 20%. I know it's at Oxford. I can't shake the image of that game from last year, and I know that's wrong. Like,
no, I'm with you completely. I watched Saturday night. I watched Georgia show up against Texas, like, and Kirby's quote, which I thought was fascinating, which was, "We came to eat." When they kind of get that way, when they get that arrogant thing about them, they're scary as hell. Like when they're a little sleepy, like they were early in the year against Kentucky, and they're just kind of still figuring themselves out, and they don't have that edge about them. They're kind of gettable, even though nobody gets them other than Alabama. Right. But like Saturday, the way they showed up and the way they played and that intensity and stuff, and you've seen them a lot more than I have, Blake. I mean, they look like monsters in those kind of games.
They did, and the first half of the Alabama game is starting to look more like the aberration than the rule. And they weren't good against Kentucky either, but they're never good against Kentucky. That's just Georgia for you when they play Kentucky. For some reason, Mark Stoops knows how to keep his team in the game when they play Georgia. But yeah, they were awful in that first half against Alabama, and they've been a different team since then. They weren't always dominant, but they've got off the mat pretty well, and they were dominant against Texas. Like, that's the defense that I think most of us thought we were going to see from Georgia all year. Now, I still don't think it's not Kirby's most complete team, not by a long shot. Like, you look at the lopsided win against Texas, and the defense was phenomenal. The offense did enough to get by, but they weren't great. Carson Beck's not having a good season. He's making too many mistakes. It's not all on him. They don't have the playmakers, the weapons that they had last year. Brock Bowers was the ultimate security blanket. I mean, anytime it was 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8 last year, if they needed 6 yards, Brock Bowers was going to find a hole in the defense about 2 yards past the sticks. Carson Beck was hitting him for a complete 8-yard completion, moving the chains. If they needed 8 yards, Bowers would find a hole in the defense 9 yards from the line of scrimmage and move the chains. And I think he misses that security blanket. But I think they are getting a little better offensively. Mike Bobo is slowly realizing that his running back exists. I mean, they look their best with the ball in Trevor Etienne's hands against Texas, and they need to do more of that. Like that, I think that's when Georgia's at their best and takes a little bit off Carson Beck's shoulders. And so it's not Kirby's most complete team. It's not his deepest team. But what I always say in these scenarios is like 2024 Georgia doesn't have to play 2022 Georgia. 2022 Georgia's not on the schedule. 2020 Alabama, not on the schedule. They just have to be the best team this year, and I think they're in that conversation. Like, I'm not, you know how we always react Saturday to Saturday in college football. We kind of feel like we need to have these over the top takes in response to one game, and I guess I'm trying not to go there on Georgia because, you know, I think the urge after they trounced Texas was to say Georgia is the team to beat. They are the superpower this year. It's Georgia versus everybody, and I don't necessarily feel that way. Like I more see like there are tiers forming, there are championship tiers forming, and Georgia proved that they're in that top tier. There's 3, maybe 4 teams in that tier that I think can win the national championship without, you know, any strange happenings in the universe necessary. I think it's Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and I might still believe in Texas, actually. Shocking as that is to say, I think that was as bad as Texas can play in the first half. I don't think Quinn Ewers has his September form back, whether he's still playing through any injury, I don't know, but he doesn't look like the same guy to me as he did in September. So I think Texas has a higher level. I would put them at the bottom of that first tier, but I think that's sort of the top tier is those 4 teams that, and I would be surprised if somebody other than those 4 wins a national championship. But getting back to Ole Miss, yeah, like, you know, to run the table, you got to beat Georgia, and I give them a very low chance of that, and then you can't stub your toe anywhere else, and we can't guarantee that's going to happen. Particularly, this is a team that lost at home to Kentucky, so. Yeah. You know, there's no guarantee that they're not going to lose it at Arkansas or Florida. So, yeah, I guess I'd put it at about 10%.
That's what I tell people all the time in the last couple of weeks where they just get so understandably emotional about the LSU game. And I'm like, that's not the game that should be eating you up. That was a close game. It was really ended up being really well played both ways. And, you know, I mean, LSU made one more play than you made. But the game that should just eat you alive, especially as we start stacking Saturdays, is Kentucky. And everybody talks about the one play at the end. Yeah, but you should have won that game in a way where one play at the end didn't matter. I mean, you should have dominated that game because they're not good. And we're seeing that week over week. I mean, they go to Gainesville and get blown out, really. You know, they lost to Vanderbilt. We'll talk about Vandy in a minute. I mean, they've lost games. That loss looks worse all the time. I won't be surprised if Auburn gets its first SEC win of the year against Kentucky. I mean, it's a devastating loss. It's a mind it's a mind numbing loss. Really, it's brutal. It's at the end of the year. If when they lose, let's say they lose to Georgia and that's the 3rd loss, and we all start writing our playoff obituaries. If you're worth your salt as a journalist, you're going to go back to the Kentucky game and write about that because that's where the season went off the rails. It wasn't in Baton Rouge, and it wasn't against a Georgia team that has lost one regular season game since COVID. It was Kentucky.
That's right, and this is why we all thought Ole Miss was about the surest playoff bet in the SEC this side of Georgia before the season is because the schedule was perfect for them. I mean, they could have lost, theoretically, they would have had a little bit of a soft strength of record, soft strength of schedule, but, you know, in theory, I think they could have lost this 29-26 game to LSU, could have lost as long as you don't get completely trounced by Georgia, take care of business elsewhere, you're 10-2, you don't have a win over a single ranked opponent your entire season, but you're 10-2, you play in the SEC, Greg Sankey does some politicking for you, and there you are, you got the 11th seed in the playoff, and you see what happens, you know?
100%.
And so I agree with you. It comes back to the Kentucky game. There's really no excusing it. And I know we do this song and dance every stinking September about how good of a coach Mark Stoops is and how, Kentucky's a team you don't want to play. And then come November, we're like, Kentucky's an afterthought. They're exactly what we thought they were. They're a little bit better with Mark Stoops than they've historically been, but they're still in the bottom half of the SEC. They never look as good in November as they do in September. They steal one from somebody every September. But that doesn't excuse it happening, because at the end of the day, Kentucky's like a 5-7 team. That's about where they're going to finish, right? And so if Ole Miss is not going to the playoff this year, which, as we're talking, we don't think they're going to be, they're not going to be in the playoff because they lost at home. And that's the big thing, at home, to a team that's like 5-7.
Yeah, I mean, they'll look back at that day and go, that was, you eliminated your margin for error that day, and completely. All right, just real quick, because I don't want to keep you super long, because you're giving me a lot of your time. Just your thoughts on some games this week that could have long-standing ramifications. The big one, of course, is LSU, Texas A&M, two teams that are quietly a combined 7-0 in the SEC. They're both 6-1. The winner of this, I mean, Blake, the winner of this is in pretty good shape moving forward in terms of getting to the playoffs. Well, one of these teams has a pretty decent chance of making the SEC championship game if they can continue to build on this win. I've seen LSU in person the last 2 weeks in Baton Rouge and Fayetteville, and I think that's a team that's hitting its stride. And Texas A&M has looked more than serviceable the last couple of outings.
Yeah, this feels like a playoff elimination game for the loser. Now, technically, it won't be. I mean, it'll be just the first SEC loss, second loss overall for the team that loses Saturday. And it's plausible that the losing team could run the table and still be sitting there on the bubble at 10-2. I mean, I think it's probably a little easier for LSU to run the table than for Texas A&M, although it's possible for both. LSU gets Alabama at home in a couple weeks. I favor LSU in that game. I think LSU is exactly the type of team that's going to give Alabama fits, because defense is very good this year. They're particularly vulnerable in the back end of the defense, and that's what LSU does. They got receivers, they got a quarterback. LSU's still a little bit soft in certain areas. The back end of their defense is kind of soft. Their running game is slowly progressing, but it's not dominant. But what they do well is Garrett Nussmeier's pretty good quarterback. He's got really good receivers. And so I like LSU to beat Alabama in a couple weeks. So I still think there's an avenue for LSU if they lose, but it wipes out the margin for error, and it leaves you on that bubble at 10-2. So the winner emerges in great shape. The loser, in tough shape but not eliminated. Texas A&M, they go on the road in a couple weeks to South Carolina. South Carolina's been that team that nobody really wants to play this year. They can beat anybody. They could lose to anybody. They still have Texas on the schedule at the end of the season, which could be a playoff elimination game for Texas A&M. That game's in College Station, so I think if their season is on the line against Texas, you can't rule A&M out. I mean, that place is going to be rocking. So, yeah, I mean, that's the big one this weekend. I would say the way I'm looking at it is winner is in the playoffs, loser is not. But I think this is going to be really messy on Selection Sunday. There is going to be a log jam of 10-2, 11-1, 12-1 teams, and you're going to have all the conference commissioners politicking for the spots, and there's going to be 7 at-large spots, and somebody's getting left out. A 10-2 team is getting left out. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know what conference it's going to be from, but 10-2 does not assure you a spot from a Power 4 conference, I don't think, with the way this season is shaping out, particularly if you have a soft strength schedule.
Missouri has one bad loss, but it's just one loss, and they've got an opportunity at Alabama. You wrote a story a couple weeks ago. It was really well done about Kalen DeBoer kind of feeling some heat after one loss, and now he's lost in Knoxville. He looked like raw hell after that game. I mean, it looked like he had just been put through the ringer. That is a different kind of job, which is the story that you were really working on. If Missouri were to go to Tuscaloosa and win, and for the record, I don't think they will, but let's say they do, the rest of their path is pretty easy. they could at 11-1. I think they're certainly in at 11-1 in the SEC, even with the one bad loss. And suddenly Alabama is staring elimination in the face on Saturday if it loses, even before it gets to Baton Rouge, if it loses to Missouri. Any chance Mizzou pulls this off?
I think there's a chance. There's a chance with anybody playing Alabama at this point. You know, I wrote in a column this week, Alabama fans used to wear these buttons, these pins to games that would say, in all caps, beat everyone. I feel like the mood around that program is beat anyone. I mean, literally, just beat anybody right now because that's not an easy task for Alabama. This one, we talked about how LSU A&M feels like a playoff elimination game, but there's still a path for the loser. This one, I see no path for the loser. This is absolutely a playoff elimination game. I know if Missouri loses, it would just be their second loss, but they have nothing else on that schedule propping them up, and they got trounced by Texas A&M. So if there's going to be a 10-2 team left out, and Missouri's sitting on 10-2, it's going to be them. They have to get to 11-1 and beat Alabama for them to have a hope. 10-2 with a blowout loss to A&M is not going to get it done for them with no signature victories on the schedule. So they have to have a win. Alabama, I know the committee historically loves Bama. If there's any possible way to get Bama in the playoff, the committee has historically done it. I don't think there's going to be a way to get them in with 3 losses. So it's an elimination game for both teams. And if Bama loses, I almost think to the fan base, it's hard to say because losing to Vanderbilt is just the ultimate stain, right? But I almost think this will go down even worse than the Vanderbilt loss because it's at home. It's at home. It's at Bryant-Denny, and that the reputation of that Saban had was Alabama doesn't lose, but it definitely doesn't lose at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So to lose to Missouri at your home stadium would just be devastating, I think, to Kalen DeBoer. And there's also this image that I think is unfair at this point, but I still think there's this image around the traditional SEC schools, your charter members, that that's Missouri. Like, they're not even real SEC. They're fake SEC. Like, yeah, they had a couple good seasons early on when the East was down, but that was because the East was down. And I think it's getting to the point where that perception of Missouri is incredibly unfair, but I still think it exists at places like Alabama. So the average Alabama fan's not going to say, hey, this is a Missouri team that's going to finish like 10-2, 11-1. They're going to say, we lost at home to Missouri. Go back to Washington, Kalen DeBoer. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is critical for him.
It's a Missouri team that goes into this game 17-3 in their last 20 games. I mean,
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Eli's done a really good job there. Yeah, the loss in College Station was bad, but it was just one loss. I'm with you.
No,
This Kalen DeBoer thing, it's unfair to him. But look, you know more coaches than I know. You're a national guy. You know more people than I do. But I know enough people in coaching that were like, I'm going to tell you, man, that's a great job. It's an elite job. It's a top 2, 3, maybe 1 job. But the dude who replaces Nick Saban can't win. I mean, you're fail. You're going to fail. Now, replacing the guy who replaces Nick Saban, different deal. But DeBoer it's such a brutal job, and it looks like it's already weighing on him. Just looking at him physically, just his face, his kind of emotions after the Tennessee game in Knoxville, he looks not overwhelmed. That's not the word. I don't know. Maybe you'll disagree. He just looks like he's got a mountain on his shoulders that he's trying to carry around.
I think the interesting thing with replacing Saban is there was going to be pressure on this job anyway, but I actually look at it a little bit differently because even if you're not at Alabama now, you get 2, maybe 3 years, and you have to win or you're collecting your failure money and see you later. And so, like, that's kind of the way I look at it is it doesn't matter if you're at Florida or you're at Auburn, or whatever SEC school that thinks they should be a playoff team and isn't. If you don't get it done in 2 or 3 years, they're going to throw you overboard. But I think what elevates this for Kalen DeBoer is not just that he's replacing the GOAT. It's that Saban took that job on ESPN and he's on College Game Day for 3 hours every Saturday, and he's right in front of everybody's face as this visual reminder of what came before Kalen DeBoer. And he's dropping knowledge on game day. He's talking about Alabama. He's talking about the SEC. And I think that's what makes this a special, unique situation for Kalen DeBoer that really ramps up the pressure. I think it's less, and this is where I differ from some people, I think it's less about replacing the GOAT. I think it's less about, as big as the Alabama job is, like I said, the pressures at Auburn are huge too, on down the line. The difference for me is that Saban's in front of everybody on TV for hours every week. And it's just this visual reminder of, well, there's Nick Saban now. He's retired. Alabama doesn't have him anymore. Oh, and the guy they have, he lost to Vanderbilt. I just think it would have been a fair, it wouldn't have been easy in any circumstances. It would have been much better for Kalen DeBoer if Nick Saban had retired, had moved to Jupiter, Florida permanently, and said, I'm hitting the golf course 6 days a week. It's been a pleasure, and I'm going to go work on my handicap. Now, I'm not saying Nick Saban had to do that. He didn't know Kalen DeBoer anything. Nick Saban's earned the right to do whatever he did in college football. So the fact that he chose to do ESPN and Game Day, that's fine. It's a free country. He can do whatever he wants. But it didn't do Kalen DeBoer any favors. I think that's the thing that ramps up pressure on him more than anything, is that Nick Saban didn't go quietly into the night. He went to ESPN, which has all the rights to the SEC and talks about Alabama and the SEC nonstop. And they're not saying good things about Alabama right now.
No, it's an astute point. You're exactly right. You've mentioned Vanderbilt a couple of times. Do you give the Commodores, who are so close, man, to being like the greatest story in college football right now? I mean, if they win in double overtime at Mizzou and just make one stop at Georgia State, and I realize lots of teams can do this. Ole Miss has been doing this for 2 weeks. If Vanderbilt's so close to being like 6-7-1 or 7-0, you give Vanderbilt any shot at all against Texas Saturday in Nashville?
A little bit, maybe. I think what's tough for Vanderbilt is Texas's defense is really good. So what Vanderbilt was able to do to Alabama, I don't think they can do to Texas. I mean, yeah, Texas gave up 30 points to Georgia, but all but one of Georgia's scoring drives traveled fewer than 35 yards. They had one scoring drive that went 35 yards or more. I mean, the Texas offense continually set Georgia up for opportunities, and Georgia took advantage. And so I don't think we're going to see Vanderbilt be able to do to Texas what it did to Alabama, because Texas has a much better defense. So I don't think it's going to be a rout, because I think Vanderbilt is this year legitimately a solid team. And I think it's tough for solid teams to be routed by even good teams. So I think they can hang around a little bit, but the chances for an upset feel like a long shot. But that's been Vanderbilt's whole season, right? I mean, I would have said the chances of them being 5-2 at this point were next to nothing, and we're living in fantasy world. So they've exceeded every expectation, but yeah, I think Texas gets off the mat and probably wins relatively comfortably because of that defense. That is, and that's why I continue to say I think Texas is in that top tier of national championship contenders, because I do think they have one of the best defenses in the country. And if Quinn Ewers starts to play better, which I don't know if he will, he has a tendency to fade a little bit in the big games. But if he can get it figured out in the second half of the season like he did in the month of September, then I do think Texas still is on the list of teams that has a chance to win the whole thing.
All right, a couple of quick hitters, and I'm getting you out of here, but I just want to get your thoughts on these, not the games, but there's a couple of storylines inside these games that nobody else will really be paying attention to. Kentucky and Auburn play. Hugh Freeze not making his offseason any more pleasant by continuing to blow these fourth quarter games. And Mark Stoops has kind of pissed off a lot of Kentucky people. He blames them when he blames the fans NIL stuff whenever they lose. It's beginning to rub. People are getting tired of it, obviously. In a world where Kentucky loses to Auburn, it'd be Auburn's first SEC win. Does that ratchet up the heat on Stoops to a point where maybe a change happens?
Stoops' buyout is monstrous. His buyout, I think, is at like $44 million at the end of the season. So he has built in some protection. But I agree with the general premise around Stoops. He's made things more uncomfortable than they need to be on himself because of his public comments bemoaning NIL. I mean, fans don't want to hear that. I'm sorry. Even if a certain degree, if it's true, they don't want after a loss to hear you complain that the reason you're losing is your fans are cheapskates, and that he hasn't used that word cheapskate, but he's done everything but use that word. I mean, that is the generous paraphrasing of what he said multiple times now, is that fans are cheapskates and don't donate to Kentucky, and so they're getting trounced on NIL. Well, guess what? NIL is a multi-pronged effort, and if you're not getting it done in the NIL space, part of that falls on the coach for not galvanizing giving. I mean, it'd be like if you're running a political campaign and you have no donations rolling in at all. Well, part of that falls on the candidate. Maybe the candidate stinks if fundraising isn't going well. I mean, these coaches don't want to have to be fundraisers, but that's the reality anymore. That's why you're getting paid $9 million to be a college football coach. It's not just to scheme up third down defense. You have to inspire giving, and that doesn't all fall on the head coach, but some of that falls on the head coach. That's why we see coaching changes a lot of times. That inspires giving. You get fresh blood in there. You get someone in there with the personality that resonates with the fan base. All of a sudden, giving shoots up a little bit, right? And so I don't think it sits well, and it doesn't pass the smell test for Mark Stoops to put it all on the fans. And he had the public flirtation with Texas A&M last year. Yeah, I think there's a difference, though, between wearing out your welcome and getting fired. And I just think with Stoops' buyout, he might wear out his welcome pretty quickly here, but it's going to be a slow march, I think, to the point of Kentucky making a move on Stoops. Now, Hugh Freeze is different. You said something interesting there, that Hugh Freeze could make this offseason even more uncomfortable on himself. I'm not 100% sold that Hugh Freeze is getting to the offseason.
Oh, wow.
I think he probably will. Like, push comes to shove, I think he's going to make it there. But his buyout is at about $20 million. The interesting thing, though, with Hugh Freeze's buyout, so when they fired Gus and they fired Harsin, 50% of the buyout was due within the first 30 days. Within the first 30 days, they had to pay half of those coaches' buyout. So for Gus, that was $10 million due to Gus within a month. For Brian Harsin, that was $7.5 million due within a month. Hugh Freeze's buyout's not structured that way. They would get to spread his buyout out in monthly installments throughout the next 5 years. You could spread out $20 million over the next 5 years. It's 4 or 5 years. Don't hold me to the timeline. Whatever the end of that contract is when they can spread that out through. So
under $1 million a month for, basically $500,000 a month or less. Yeah. See, that'd be difficult for you or me to do, but Auburn University could pull it off.
Bingo. And they're done paying off Gus. He's been paid by this point. And so I'm not saying that's where it's going to happen, but Auburn's sitting at 2-5. And I don't see a guaranteed victory left on the schedule. Now they're going to get somebody. They're going to beat somebody, but they have Kentucky, they have Vanderbilt, they have Louisiana Monroe, which I think is sitting on a 5-1 record. Yep. They have Alabama at the end, of course, and there's one more in there.
A&M also.
Okay, and so there's not a layup game in there. They probably get to 4-8. I'll say they win a couple. Maybe they split versus Kentucky and Vanderbilt, and they beat La Monroe, and they get to 4-8. As long as the recruiting class holds, I think Hugh Freeze is getting a third year. And he's got the number 5 ranked class in the nation. What do you guys got him in Rivals? Is it 5? I don't know where it's around top 5. Yeah. So he's got a solid class. That's what's propping him up. But we've seen it at different places. Like when the losses start to mount in October and November, sometimes you lose a few commits. Sometimes a few of those guys peel off, and your top 5 class becomes a top 15 class, and that's the only thing he really has right now propping him up. And so I think, to be clear, I think Hugh Freeze is probably making it to year 3. But if it continues to be ugly, if he rattles off a couple losses to Kentucky and Vanderbilt, and he's staring down 2-7, and that buyout can be spread out in monthly installments, and it's Auburn. We've seen if Auburn's got a stomach for one thing, it's for firing coaches. Right?
Well, look, if you believe internally, and I'm not saying they do or should, but if you believe internally that something has failed, that it's not going to work, kicking it down the can a year has not been proven to be the best medicine. I mean, in fact, the best thing is to go, we made a bad hire. It didn't work. It doesn't fit. Next. And try again, right? Especially in this era of college football where you see, like, it's not fair, but you see Kurt Cignetti winning in year 1. Mm-hmm. You see people doing well in year 1, and that factors in at a place like Auburn, where they think whether it's justified or not, perception's reality. And the perception at Auburn is that they should be a national power. And they haven't beaten a ranked team since 2021. And they're losing one fourth quarter game after another to Oklahoma and Missouri and programs that Auburn people think they should be superior to. Again, perception, reality. They lost to Arkansas. They've lost games this season. Hell, they lost to Cal. Games at Auburn that you can't, in the minds of their big boosters and in the minds of their fans, it's a very loyal fan base. Those are inexcusable losses, period. They don't want to hear excuses. To them, there is no excuse, maybe for one of those games, but not all 4 of those games. And so the L's pile up, and the people go, this is ridiculous. This doesn't work. And Hugh is so thin-skinned, and he's so sensitive. I covered him for 6 seasons. And there's still a certain stain on him for what happened at Ole Miss, and it's going to be easy for people just to go, nope, got to find somebody different. And I agree with you. The recruiting thing is all that's saving him right now, and maybe it holds up because of NIL. But if it were to fall apart, I think your point's a very good one. All right, last thing. I'm going to get you out of here. I kept you way longer than you agreed to stay. Sam Pittman got a big win a couple weeks ago against Tennessee. They had the 4th largest crowd in the history of their stadium on Saturday for LSU, and they kind of laid an egg. Lost by 24 to a good LSU team. Game got away in the third, fourth quarters. They go to Mississippi State this weekend. They're a 7.5-point favorite. Mississippi State's played better lately. They're playing well for Jeff, and it looks like, it kind of feels like a win is coming soon, perhaps, for them. What would an Arkansas loss mean for Sam Pittman? And then on the flip side of that, how attractive is that job potentially if it becomes open?
I think it's a tough job, but you're still going to get good candidates for it. I mean, it's an SEC job. You're not going to have a lack of applications, right? But I think the industry looks at it as certainly bottom half of the SEC, and if you're bottom half of the SEC, you're setting yourself up to be on the hot seat within a few years, right? And that's why Arkansas hired Sam Pittman in the first place. Like, it's not a mystery. He wasn't Arkansas's first choice. They had to go down the list a little bit to get somebody to say yes. Now, I think the circumstances were a little bit different there. Chad Morris had been absolutely horrible at Arkansas. So maybe Sam Pittman, what he's done, during his tenure, it's not always been great, but there were some good times. Maybe that's restored a little bit of shine to that job. And hey, you always know your offensive coordinator that's sitting there will take the job. Take the job if all else fails. I know that's a juicy narrative. My alluding to Bobby Petrino there. I for the record, I would be surprised if that's where this ends. Is Bobby P getting the job permanently. But this would be a really damaging loss for Pittman, because it felt like he kind of got away from the hot seat a little bit with the win against Tennessee. But we know in this conference in particular how quickly you get back on it, right? You're never more than a step or two removed from it. And so if they were to lose at Mississippi State, that sort of negates the Tennessee loss, I think. And there's that stipulation in Pittman's contract: if he falls below 500 since the start of the 2021 season, Arkansas can fire him at a discount. Now, his buyout's not monstrous anyway, but if he were to rattle off some losses here, he's not triggered that clause yet. He's kept his record above 500 since 2021, and you'd have to go do the math. I'm not sure exactly where he is, but he's a game or two at least in the right side of the balance sheet. But he's got Mississippi State, then followed by Ole Miss, tag at one at La Tech after that. But I think this one at Mississippi State's really, really important to him. I mean, if he gets this one, Arkansas is getting to a bowl game. Is that enough to save Sam Pittman? Yeah, I think it probably is enough to buy him another year. Because if you're Hunter Yurachek, the AD at Arkansas, you're not facing a ton of heat right now, because your fan base, which really cares about basketball too, is eating out of the palm of your hand because you just hired John Calipari. And so ADs make changes when they feel heat. They don't always make a change when maybe if you were the CEO of a company, you would say, I need to make the change. I think ADs make a change when they have to make a change. And if Sam Pittman goes 6-6 and Hogs fans are really excited about first year of John Calipari and they're feeling okay with their AD, they're still liking him for that hoops hire, I don't know that Hunter Yurachek faces that much pressure to fire Sam Pittman at 6-6. But Pittman's got to get to 6-6. He's got to get to a bowl game. He's got to show the progress does in fact exist. And I think doing that means beating Mississippi State, beating La Tech, and getting to a bowl game.
Where are you this weekend?
I am at LSU, Texas A&M.
Yeah, with the Tigers again. That'll be a hell of a game. It's one I'm looking forward to checking out. I think it'll get a big number on ABC, even going up against Game 1 of the World Series. Blake, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it. You were great. Thanks.
Absolutely. Good talking to you, Neal.
Eddie Radosevich covers Oklahoma for Soonerscoop.com. One of the funniest guys in all of media. Everybody loves Eddie. He's fantastic. He's a lot of fun. We talked to him at SEC Media Days. He said he would do this week, and here we are. It's Oklahoma Ole Miss week. And Eddie, I don't know about you, but I didn't think these two teams would kind of come limping into this game in late October the way that they are. But here we are. Between the two of them, there's 5 SEC losses already. Oklahoma's coming off of a train wreck of a first quarter against South Carolina. Ole Miss is coming off a second loss to LSU 10 days ago as we record this, in overtime, a game that Ole Miss probably should have won but didn't. And they're learning the hard way that, hey, should have and a few plays away don't count in the standings. And then Oklahoma, meanwhile, it's been a mess in year one in the SEC, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to say it. It's certainly been a mess on one side of the football for Oklahoma. They're terrible. They're terrible offensively. I'm not even trying to be a smartass. They're a bad unit. And when you look at everything that's kind of come out from the fallout of the South Carolina game, which I've been going to Oklahoma games for probably the last 30 plus years. Parents were season ticket holders, went to school here. That's certainly the first quarter was maybe one of the more embarrassing experiences I've ever seen in that stadium. It led to the firing of Seth Luttrell on Sunday night. So Oklahoma heads down to Oxford this weekend, breaking in a new play caller in Joe John Finley. They elevated Kevin Johns. He was an analyst, the former offensive coordinator with Duke a season ago. He is now the quarterbacks coach for Oklahoma. And, you're literally talking about maybe one of the worst offensive units Oklahoma's put on the field. Certainly in recent memory, I think historically they might end up being one of the worst offensive lines that Oklahoma's ever put out onto a football field. Currently ranked 132nd in sacks allowed. Gave up 9 sacks a week ago to South Carolina. So, yeah, other than that, everything's going really well right now on the Norman side of things. No, it's been a really interesting year. I don't think that anybody could have, I think predicted or expected the type of offensive problems that they've had. It's basically every position unit has a little something that has gone on with them, whether it be an offensive line group that's just been flat out awful. The quarterback situation hasn't been great because of the offensive line. They can't run the football. The wide receiver unit, as I'm sure Ole Miss fans will see come Wednesday night when the availability report comes out, they don't have very many guys. I mean, you're literally talking about the top 5 wide receivers are all injured. It will be interesting going into Saturday. Deion Burks, the transfer wide receiver from Purdue, who's missed the last couple of weeks, got hurt against Tennessee. He went through pregame workouts or pregame warmups on Saturday, looked to be headed in the right direction. I think there's some speculation that maybe Oklahoma was able to get him back come Saturday, but from top to bottom, it's been a complete disaster on the offensive side of the ball, which is, I think, unfortunate. What Oklahoma fans would say is unfortunate because it is a defense that's starting to take that turn in year 3 under Brent Venables. It's a group that looks night and day different from obviously their teammates on the offensive side of the football, and certainly a far cry from what that thing was under Lincoln Riley in 17, 18, 19. So it's fascinating. I'm sure the same is for you guys over there in Oxford, just in terms of it seems like there's always something right now, and it's usually on the negative side of things for Brent Venables' football program here as they, kind of, as you said, limp in. I mean, the way that they've been gotten their ass kicked at the Cotton Bowl against Texas, I guess you could say they were in the game against Tennessee. It was a 2-score game, never really felt like a threat. And then, obviously, last week, I mean, we're talking about the first 9 plays of the game, or the first 9 plays offensively for Michael Hawkins. It went about as poorly and as big of a disaster as you could possibly think. It was 21-0 before people really got settled in. So I'm excited about coming to Oxford. I am excited about that. I want to see the Grove and all that kind of stuff. But man, it's certainly weird to talk about right now with Oklahoma and what they are at 4-3 going into the game on Saturday.
Yeah, Saturdays it's going to be interesting. I want to dive back into Oklahoma in a minute because I've got questions. But yeah, for Saturday it's going to be interesting because for the longest time this was like one of the big like festival kind of games circled. You know, Oklahoma's first trip ever to Oxford. It's I guess they played each other in the Independence Bowl in 1999. I think that's it, right?
Deuce McAllister ran wild, broke I guess that would have been a 10-year-old Eddie's heart that night as we went into the new millennium. But there's a lot of fans coming. There's a lot of people traveling from Oklahoma City, a lot of people that I know, friends that are coming over from Dallas that have Ole Miss, graduates as some of their friend group down in the Dallas area. So I think that there's still a lot of excitement. There's certainly not a lot of excitement about the product right now on the football field, but I don't know. Maybe with everything that's gone on here over the last, 24 hours, it does add a little bit of excitement, speculation, intrigue, just because nobody really knows what to really truly expect when they get back out onto the field and especially coming out of what has been a hellacious last couple weeks.
So in the summer, in the preseason, there was a lot of talk about how talented Jackson Arnold is, and he has a big arm and all of those things. And then obviously things don't go well, and he gets benched for Hawkins, and Hawkins plays a little bit, and they somehow come back and beat Auburn in that weird game, and then they stick with him, even though you're like, yeah, but he's not the better quarterback. What do? You should play the better. Is Arnold's problem Arnold, or is it he can't get protected? Is it the receiving? Is it everything? What's gone into his struggles in year 1 as the starter?
Yeah, it's been a little bit of everything, and I think that you go back to the Alamo Bowl. He made his first start as Dylan Gabriel, entered the transfer portal. Obviously, ends up in Eugene with Dan Lanning, and I think that there was a lot of hope. Certainly coming out of the Alamo Bowl, despite all the turnovers, and I think that had been pounded into his brain, got to take care of the football, and it just has never been in rhythm. It's an offense that obviously had a bunch of injuries on the offensive line at the beginning of the season, and you started to get guys back, but the offense continued to sputter. And I think that, like, you look at the numbers, whether it be 127th in third down percentage, 129th in total offense, 116th in passing offense, 107th in scoring offense. It's just, if it's not one thing, it's another. If they have a big play, and explosive play wise has been nil, nothing. They haven't been able to get anything, whether it be through the ground or through the air. And it's kind of been one thing after another. It's been, you had the injuries, and then you're starting to play a bunch of freshman wide receivers, and then you lose a couple of the experienced wide receivers that you still had out there. And it's just been nothing. And, I think that the kind of the tipping point for Jackson was the 3 turnovers against Tennessee in the first half, in a game that I think a lot of people felt like they could have been in had it not been for the turnovers. And I think the most concerning part about all of this is it's an offense here as they move into, I guess, what would be the 8th game of the season, that it seems like they're getting worse. And I think that was kind of the impetus for the move that Brent Venables made on Sunday night with the relieving of Seth Luttrell, who, around here, I think there was a lot of people that wanted him to be the guy. But they've gotten basically no development from the quarterback position. I'd be truly hard-pressed to say there's one guy on the offensive side of the football that has improved over the course of the season. And I think that's certainly been a frustrating thing to go through. It's certainly been, a frustrating experience for Jackson and then Michael Hawkins. And it's gotten so bad to the point, obviously, with the firing of Seth Luttrell, that trying to build a game plan, and what Joe John Finley is going to have to undertake here moving into this week as they begin practice on Monday, there's not one thing they do well. And building an offense around a quarterback who, I think that there's a belief that it's going to be Jackson on Saturday. Where do you go from here? They did literally, truly do nothing well offensively. And I don't know. It's been a lot of the quarterback. It's like you said, it's been a little bit of everything for Jackson and a little bit of everything for this offense that it seems to be working against them. So it's a struggle bus. There's no doubt about that. And I don't know where they go from here. They can't run the football. And it all starts on the offensive line. A lot of their problems start up front. I mean, there are plays that the play is basically over as soon as the quarterback catches the snap. And it's because guys are in the backfield, and it's really, really hard to really truly identify, what Jackson went through, because the offensive line has been so bad. And I think that in part because of that, he lost a lot of confidence. He had the deer in the headlights look a couple of times, and especially there in the first half against Tennessee. And, I think he was a guy that basically just lost all confidence in himself. And, certainly at a position like quarterback, it makes it tough for everybody else around him.
So Lane Kiffin, who knows a thing or two about calling offensive plays and installing an offense, was like, hey, look, he was asked about Joe John Finley, and he was on Lane's first staff at Ole Miss, and he's like, he wasn't in a play-calling position for us, so I don't know how he'll call a game. And he's like, but look, there's only so much you can do in 6 days. As an offensive coordinator, when you come in and you're going to set up a game plan, you can't just change everything and go, hey, we're going to scrap everything that Seth Luttrell did, and we're going to put this whole new system in. Ready? Go. It doesn't work like that. So how much do you expect change? And just from a personality standpoint, Finley's an Oklahoma guy. You guys know him a little bit. Do you expect him to be more aggressive, more conservative? What's just kind of your expectation, if you even have one?
I think that there is a sense that they've been so bad. Why not throw everything that you possibly got at Ole Miss? I just don't know if they're going to be able to block enough to really truly have anything to work with. So I think it's going to look pretty similar to what we've seen here throughout the course of the season. I know that there's been a lot of, from a media standpoint and a fan standpoint, a lot of frustration with what they've been asking guys to do from a schematic standpoint. We spent all week last week talking about the tight end position and not putting them on an island against Kyle Kennard or the freshman kid that I'm now completely Dylan Stewart.
Stewart's a monster. He is so good.
They're unbelievable, and which makes it even more just insane, frustrating, crazy to think that, from the get-go, one of their plans was to block one of those guys with a tight end. It's just not going to happen. There's nothing that Oklahoma's done through the first 5-6 games of the season that would tell you this is
to be a hair model, man. I mean, I can't do it. I mean, what do you want me to do? I mean, absolutely, you can't do that. I mean, you can't go, hey, here. You're going to see this freak of nature over here who also has like elite skill set, at least pass rush skills. Block him by yourself without help. And if you don't get it done, the whole play is going to blow up. I mean,
it's kind of like the Tennessee game plan. They tried to run right at Tennessee with an offensive line that hasn't been able to move anybody all year. I think that we've talked about it on radio this week. We talked about it obviously on the YouTube channel for Suitor Scoop and over on the message boards. It's a very arrogant game plan to walk in and think that you're just going to be able to do something that you haven't done all season. So there's a lot of reasons. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why Seth was fired. It's not all play calling, obviously execution, and just not having personnel that can simply execute what they're being asked to do, but it's from top to bottom. It's been a complete disaster.
Defensively, Oklahoma's good. I mean, like sometimes they're really good, and you look at them and like that score. That's why I didn't see the game unfold, and I just saw the score pop up, and you're like, wait, what? Like South Carolina sucks on offense. How do they have 21? And then you find out it has to be disheartening for that unit. Like you said, year 3 under Venables, are kind of turning the corner. They've got playmakers sort of everywhere. They're really good in the middle of the field from what I've seen defensively.
Mm-hmm.
What's the mindset like with them? Have they kind of lost hope yet, or is there still some optimism that, hey, it's just a matter of time before things kind of go their way?
I think that like you go into every game, and I'm sure that those guys, as much as we've asked them after games, and the irony that's there with the group of core seniors, whether it be Danny Stutzman, Woody Washington, Billy Bowman, Ethan Downs, a bunch of guys that have been around the program for a long time, and a bunch of guys that kind of were ingratiated into college football with an Oklahoma defense that was truly holding them back from anything because they were so good offensively, even under Jeff Lebby over the last couple of years. It's completely polar opposite now, and this is a defense that everybody's trying to rely on to keep them within games as Oklahoma's offense goes through the struggles that they have. So there is some extreme irony there that it's flipped 180 from what those guys came into. We talked to Danny, obviously, after the game on Saturday, and I think that they're trying to stay as positive as possible. But at the same time, I think that everybody knows what the problem is right now, and it's an Oklahoma offense that simply, if they were just like a grade below bad, I think that they could get away with it. They're not anywhere close to that. So there has to be frustration. I think that everybody is pretty aware of the situation. They're around it every day. And, I'm obviously with a fan base like Oklahoma, it's gotten pretty ugly on, social media and things like that. So I think they're just trying to grind this thing out, maybe make a couple plays, keep you in a ball game. But there is a point where the offense continually goes out there and they turn the ball over, they throw a pick six or they get a scoop and score, and they're being thrown into some awful situations. So it's kind of like keep your head above water, keep paddling underneath the water, and just trying to keep your head above. And at some point, you're going to have to give up. You got to get some help from the offensive side of the ball. But you're right. They are extremely good. I would say it's night and day different from what it has been. And they got some really good players, and they've obviously done a really good job from a scheming standpoint under Brent and first-year defense coordinator Zach Alley. So from where they were a couple years ago, it's almost kind of amazing that they've been able to get to this point, but it's all brought down because of what Oklahoma can't do offensively right now. And that's simply just put 10 yards together at a time, let alone try and find an end zone.
So you mentioned fans. I'm just curious, in general, have the fans started to give up on Brent Venables? Are they losing their mind, or is everyone's staying calm, knowing this is a process, right? And it's all going to be okay? I
wouldn't say that there's nobody that is staying calm. I think that you get on Twitter, you get on any of the types of social medias, and you realize Oklahoma is a very active fan base on those social medias. But at the same time, I think that this is the first kind of turning point. Obviously, coming out of the Texas game and the way that went, and not scoring a good touchdown against Texas 2 of the last 3 seasons, it started a little bit of a churn. And then you back that up with what they put out there on Saturday against South Carolina. And I think that it is starting to become a little bit of a more uncomfortable conversation just in terms of what this is going to look like here moving forward, the trajectory of the program. He's built an excellent culture. I don't think that anybody would dispute that or debate that. But at the same time, we're also looking at a head coach right now that is now 11-11 in his first, 2.5 seasons in Norman in conference play, 1-8 against top 25 opponents. It's starting to stack up is what I'm saying. And I think that, when you look at the offensive coordinator position and the hire that's going to be made at the end of this 2024 season, and I think the expected departures of some coaches that are probably also going to join Seth Luttrell outside of the Switzer Center, it starts becoming a little bit worrisome just in terms of this hire and wherever the direction that they go for the offensive coordinator, which, Joe John Finley's currently, he has the interim tag. I wouldn't expect that he's going to be the guy when they get things together for the 2024 or 2025 football season. It might be the most important hire that Brent Venables has ever made, because I think it is pretty determined in terms of what his future is in Norman what he decides to do with this offensive coaching staff, and certainly with the OC position when they get to the end of the season, and with the portal and everything that goes into that. I'm sure that you guys are well aware of the situation in the world of college football. You got to start acting fast, because right now it's obviously nearly the end of October. All of a sudden, November 30th in the final season of the game, or the final game of the season, is going to be right around the corner, and you're going to have to act fast. So, yeah, I think that there are some people that are certainly starting to kind of wonder if Brent's going to be the guy with his connections back into the state of Oklahoma, and kind of to the certain extent, the same thing could be said for Seth Luttrell, the former national champion, a team captain on the 2000 team. Everybody wants it to work. But I think that, you can say one thing about, as active as the fan base is and as vocal as they are, it's a smart fan base at the same time. And, I think you don't have to tell Brent that what he's put out there over the last couple of years is not going to cut it in Norman. And they will find another coach that can, get in here and have some success, certainly that he hasn't been able to have here.
All right. So I'm really curious to get your answer to this, because in the media days, all of the people that cover the SEC were going up to guys like you and the people that cover Texas and be like, "Are you prepared for the SEC? What's the SEC going to? Is it going to be so different?" It's totally different. Okay, you've been through half of an SEC season now, on the field and off the field, in the ancillary stuff. Is it a lot different than what the Big 12 was? I mean, I know you're a lifetime OU guy, or is it just different uniform, same sort of thing?
No, I think it's certainly different. I mean, I think the week to week is something that I not necessarily have been surprised by it, but I think just looking at, the just sheer difference in size of guys that are South Carolina and Auburn as compared to what you would see week in and week out with the Big 12, that's night and day different. And I think that, on the field, I wouldn't say that, it's kind of crazy to talk about, because I think that defensively, they've started to go out and get some of these guys that Oklahoma has longed for on the defensive side of the football, and certainly could compete in the SEC. It's drastically different on the offensive side of the ball, and particularly at offensive line where it matters the most. So, there's definitely been a difference. I think that, the expression, I guess, that has been used in Norman is Oklahoma SEC ready. I think from a fan base standpoint, they certainly are. At the same time, though, they've been so bad offensively. I don't think that this wouldn't be a good product in the Sun Belt, let alone the SEC. So it's been certainly interesting to kind of see how they navigate this. I think that there's a lot of people that are kind of fearful of the upcoming schedule and the last 5 games for Oklahoma. South Carolina was the last game that they'll play in conference play with a team that's not in the top 25. And we've seen how it's gone with a 1-3 start. So it could be a really long 5 weeks if they're not able to find some type of spark offensively. And again, I think it's been so bad that we're not talking about even averaging 30 points a game. Can they get over 300 yards? That's kind of like the basis right now. Jackson Arnold coming in the first half last week, he's the first Oklahoma passer to have over 200 yards in a game. That's how bad this thing has been. So yeah, it's certainly been eye-opening. And, if nothing else, I do think that they're recruiting well enough. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep this class together here in the 2025 group, and particularly at the offensive line, where that could be Bill Beatenbaugh's best class he's brought in since arriving to Oklahoma. At the same time, there are, a lot of murmurs that maybe there's going to be some more offensive staff changes. How would that affect the recruiting class? It's an interesting time right now. Certainly has caught a lot of people by surprise and hand up. I was one of the people that thought that this thing would be, I knew that they were going to struggle. They were going to have some problems offensively. I don't think it was going to be one of the worst units in the country bad. And I think that's what's been so surprising.
I take it everybody around there was pretty brokenhearted about what happened in Austin Saturday night with Georgia.
I mean, I think it's so bad right now for Oklahoma, just the football program in general. There was a lot of eyeballs on what was happening in College Park with a former friend in Lincoln Riley and the way that they lost that game to Maryland. And then obviously, the frustrating thing I think for Oklahoma fans is, there was some enjoyment out of the final outcome in Austin, but at the same time, they got an up close and personal look at it 2 weeks ago at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. And, whether Oklahoma fans want to admit it or not, Sark has that thing rolling a little bit. And, even the difference in physicality and the difference in size that you saw between Oklahoma and Texas a couple weeks ago, hopefully it's a wake-up moment for a lot of people that are involved in decision-making at the Switzer Center, because I don't think Texas is going anywhere for a while. And, I certainly, when you see Arch Manning and what he could be here the next coming years, it's going to be a tough road to hoe for Oklahoma fans over the next couple of years if they don't wake up.
Take it you're not surprised that Lincoln Riley and USC, it's been a disaster, right? That doesn't shock you that he took Caleb Williams with him. He won a Heisman. They got to an Access Bowl, and then after that, it's begun to kind of fall apart, right? And they don't look very functional. And when you go lose to Maryland, right? People start asking. You have to start asking: Is it him? I mean, is it Lincoln Riley? Is he the problem? And he's so thin-skinned. You guys saw that up close and personal. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on it. I know you had some fun with it in the past and all of that, but now that you watch it kind of with some distance, what are your thoughts on what's happened with him at USC?
There's a certain level of, I don't know about self-gratification, but maybe justification in what Oklahoma fans were saying when the move, and as surprising as that was in 2021, what it's turned into. And I think that there were starting to be some cracks within the program and the foundation of the program that Lincoln had inherited from Bob Stoops. And I don't know. I think there was a lot of things that, certainly Oklahoma fans were made fun of when the move happened. And, certainly they have their own fair share of problems with Brent right now. But it's a lot familiar or very familiar with what Oklahoma fans had kind of been accustomed to. And that is, a little bit on the soft side when it comes to physicality. Certainly a defense that has gone through it. Oklahoma fans saw that, cracking under Alex Grinch before Lincoln left. And I don't know. It's been very, I think, predictable might be the word. I think that certainly USC fans are starting to see what Oklahoma fans were telling them. But, then again, it's kind of a look in the mirror moment for Oklahoma fans because they have their fair share of problems right now with Brent Venables. So I don't know. Maybe it's become a little bit popular around here, whether right or wrong. Maybe Lincoln Riley screwed over two programs instead of one.
Yeah, could be. You mentioned excited about coming to Oxford and the Grove and all that. What's your Saturday morning plan? Ole Miss people, of course, are upset that this game's at 11 p.m. They wanted this thing to be at 11 p.m. Not 11.
Sure.
What's your plan for taking in the Grove and still doing your job Saturday?
Definitely want to go through. I want to be able to just go and see it. I had some buddies that went out there to Oxford. I want to say in 2008, 2009, there was an Alabama game that they played, and I want to say that they won. And I didn't end up going, and they went, and I've never lived it down that I didn't make that trip with them. So I don't really know. I've reached out to Bunky Perkins, local Tulsa hero that can give me some itinerary on where to go. I've always heard about chicken on a stick. Is that a good thing, or is that something that everybody goes and it's kind of a tourist trap?
It's typically a late night, you're drunk thing.
Yeah.
It's typically that. It's not a culinary thing as much as it's a convenient grease. You need something in your system thing, and it's open. And yeah, it's probably a little bit of a rite of passage thing, probably. But I wouldn't build it up in my mind as this great culinary experience. It's fried chicken on a stick. It's good.
Well, I'm a fat boy. There's no problem with fried chicken in my life. I don't really know though. We're kind of excited about it. We ended up having to drive to the Auburn game a couple weeks ago, so I think kind of got the laying of the groundwork for where we need to get off, at least for the exit to Oxford. So I'm excited about it. Never been down there. Always heard unbelievable tales of the Grove. And I think it's one of those places that, if you're a true college football fan, you've heard legends of it, and really excited to kind of get down there and check it out. And like you said, I know that there's a lot of Oklahoma fans that are upset that this is an 11 a.m. kickoff, but at the same time, maybe it'll give them an ample amount of time to, wash their worries away by Saturday afternoon into Saturday evening.
When this hits the airwaves, the Thunder will be hours away from playing their opener in Denver against the Nuggets. Is Thunder fever just rolling through OKC right now, or did the injury to Hartenstein take a little of the steam off of it?
I mean, it sucks. It definitely sucks because I think everybody wants to see what this thing is going to look like with him. They escaped a little bit of a scare with Jalen Williams, J-Dub around here with the ankle injury. Doesn't sound like it's going to be too big of a deal. But yeah, I think last year, the way that they were able to win the West and kind of come out of nowhere and be a dominant force as young as they are, there's a lot of vibes from the James Harden, KD, Russ group that we kind of saw grow before our eyes. I think that we always talk about it in Oklahoma City that, I don't think that people necessarily realize how lucky Oklahoma City has been in the, era of the Thunder when they inherited a team that kind of opened up everybody's eyes to the world of the NBA. And certainly, you had to go through the love affair with all the guys and watching them grow up. It's kind of like you're back to square one. So yeah, Thunder fandom, and particularly with the way that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and Tulsa are playing college football right now, Thursday and the season opener can't come soon enough. So I'm really excited about it. I lived downtown Oklahoma City throughout the playoff run last year. It was kind of one of those, like, you didn't want to take morale victories, but it sucked the way that they got beat by Dallas and with all the friends that I have from the DFW area, but kept perspective. They're a young group. It's going to be a fun year. And, hopefully they can get back to, I think what a lot of people feel like should be a run through the West and hopefully get back to the NBA Finals. It's been a long time since meaningful basketball outside of last year was played in Oklahoma City. So it's a good time for the Thunder. They're going to take advantage of, I think, some college football fans that are fed up and ready to get out of this thing here as soon as possible.
My 18-year-old son is a lifelong Thunder fan, and he has decided that that the Clippers pick is going to end up being a lottery pick, and that the Thunder are going to win the lottery pick. They're going to add Cooper Flagg to this team and just be this unstoppable team of destiny for like a decade. And I'm like, I wouldn't put too much hope into that, but it would be interesting. But the way things work out for them, I mean, that could possibly happen. I mean, kind of like everything they touch in the draft turns to gold. It's wild.
Sam Presti's the best. He truly is the best. And I know that he's caught a lot of hell when, that first installment of the Thunder and everybody, it seemed like, graduated and KD left and Russ left. They tried to get through those years with Carmelo, and they tried the Paul George thing. As it turns out, I think it's going to be okay because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be pretty damn good. And yeah, you're right. The future is extremely bright. It's been kind of fun seeing, going through the comment section on some of the NBA, which you think college basketball or college football fans are insane. NBA Twitter is just a place. It's a set. I don't understand how people get into it. The GOAT talk and all that kind of stuff I never really like to participate in, but it's been kind of fun seeing people talk about Oklahoma City of all places as the place where Adam Silver in the league is now funneling players to. I don't have a problem with it. I know that it's going to be a fun year.
All right, real quick, I'm curious. They broke out their alternate uniform the other day, and it just has Oklahoma across it. It's always said Oklahoma City. The Thunder are not very creative with their uniforms, but they just do the Oklahoma thing, and I'm like, that's not going to be widely accepted because there's going to be all these OSU fans and stuff that are going to. I'm not buying something that just says Oklahoma on the jersey, but maybe I'm wrong.
Sure. No, they had a couple years ago. I want to say it's probably about 5 years ago. They had a sunset uniform, and it was a little bit of a lighter shade of orange, is how I would call it. They wore them every Sunday night, and you can believe that the Thunder offices were getting phone calls from folks that were mad that it was OSU orange. So I don't know if anybody can be happy. I'm not the biggest uniform guy in the entire world, but I think the new ones look pretty good. So as long as they're winning games, I don't know if people will really truly care. Now OU throws out a throwback uniform or something with as bad as things are going right now, you'll surely hear about it on social media.
Oh yeah, people would lose it. All right, last thing, I can almost hear people screaming at me to get back to OU Ole Miss. So it's Saturday morning. How do you sort of anticipate the game playing out? Is there a scenario where you see, Oklahoma maybe pulling off an upset? As we record this, it's like a 19.5-point line.
No, no. I offensively, it's just such a test, and I know that Oklahoma is pretty good defensively, but again, it's kind of one of those moments where it's like even last week after South Carolina goes up 14-0 on the scoop and score, I think there's a lot of people that felt like maybe even after they scored the first touchdown, it's like, oh, here we go again. Like things have been so tough offensively. It's just hard for me to think that things are going to change overnight, particularly up front. So maybe Joe John Finley and Kevin Johns and this offensive staff can work as a team to put together a better game plan than what we've seen here over the first 7 weeks. But it's going to be mighty, mighty tough. And obviously with Ole Miss coming off of a bye week, coming off of the loss to LSU and Baton Rouge, they got the work cut out with them, or for them, I guess, rather. And certainly, the only way that I could see Oklahoma going out there and at least keeping this somewhat tight or close in the fourth quarter would be a bunch of turnovers. Can't really expect that, though. South Carolina turned the ball over, and they weren't able to generate one on Saturday. So, it's kind of unusual. This is kind of the first time I've been covering Oklahoma for the last 10 years. This is kind of like a first, and just in terms of going into a game that I don't even know if they can keep it close, let alone be able to win the game in the fourth quarter. So maybe they could defy odds. I guess that's why you suit up every Saturday, and the kind of the cliche line of any given Sunday, any given Saturday type of deal. But yeah, they got their work cut out for them on Saturday. It's going to be a tough road trip, as well as a tough kind of final 5 games of the season here. There's a lot of people, and if you looked at the preseason SEC basketball poll, not as a lot to be expected of the Oklahoma basketball team being picked 15th. There's a lot of people that are looking forward to softball and baseball here moving forward. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun couple months here. Thank God for the Oklahoma City Thunder.
There you go, Eddie. Thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it. Please have safe travels on your way to Oxford. Hope to see you on Saturday.
We'll do. Appreciate it. Anytime.
Thanks, Eddie. Ben Mintz, Barstool Sports, kind enough to join us again here on MPW Digital Extra, as he has all season long. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing well. I know you had a week off last week. It's good for everyone after that LSU game. I'm glad we didn't have the segment last week. I had a good college football week. I got freaking just destroyed on Sunday. So I'm glad we all missed that on this segment. It was not my best Sunday, but, that's going to happen once or twice a year. Back on the horse this week. And look, I think the bye week came at a good time for Ole Miss. Playing Oklahoma comes at a good time because I think you can make a legitimate argument they're the worst team in the SEC, then Mississippi State and Auburn. I remember before this summer, Neal, you know how these sports books will post the game of the year lines, like the early lines?
Yep.
Ole Miss is 5.5 in this game, and I told everybody I know that when Ole Miss plays Oklahoma, it's going to be at least 10. Didn't think it would be 20, but here we are. So Oklahoma's rough. Hopefully this is a good bounce-back game for Ole Miss to get some momentum for the second half, and they can, try to flush what happened to Baton Rouge, because I know everybody's still reeling in the fan base, and, try to get hot here with Oklahoma and at Arkansas the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, there's no margin for error anymore. They've put themselves – everybody talks about the LSU game. I keep going back to the Kentucky game. That's the one. If you end up a game short, it wasn't a Saturday night in Tiger Stadium that got you. It was a Saturday afternoon in Oxford against Kentucky that got you. LSU's good.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I've seen LSU.
No, I agree. Before the year, I had us when I did my preseason report thing. I had Ole Miss dropping the LSU game just because I know how tough and tricky that's going to be down there. But it is that Kentucky loss, and I wasn't at the Kentucky game, and I got the any Ole Miss fans that were in Death Valley got the. It was the full. It was the full deal down there in the worst way. And
I'll say this about LSU, and I'm a Louisiana boy, and I have a soft spot. I know you are. I have a soft spot for the state, obviously. But I said this on the show earlier, and we won't spend a lot of time on this because we're gonna get to picks, and I we won't go forever. But official LSU is fantastic. Michael Bennett, the game ops people, their band, the Golden Girls, the Tiger, everything, Colin Baton Rouge, all of that stuff. It's phenomenal. It's a carnival comes to a football stadium, and it's amazing. And you walk into that place, and it's a storied place to go to a game. That being said, man, and this doesn't apply to everybody, but there's enough people down there that are this way that it's starting to apply to just about it's a sweeping assertion. The people are out of control. people, it doesn't mean that much. It shouldn't mean so much that when your team wins, you're treating other human beings like trash. You should stop. Take a look in the mirror, for God's sake, and stop. I mean, you're throwing stuff at people. You're cussing people. You're calling old women. I mean, what are you doing? Stop.
Look, I've got a target on my back for obvious reasons with Barstool and my ties down there. Look, I'll say this. You can say whatever you want to me, including F-bombs. You can call me anything. I don't care. Like, I take it on the internet all the time. That's part of my job. Like, I had this drunk LSU fan, like probably like early to mid-20s, just comes and just shoves me on the concourse when I'm walking out of there with like two hands. Like, I mean, I got shoved hard. And luckily for him, I'm a 41-year-old, slightly overweight, middle-aged guy, or I might have done something about it. But, I mean, that's too much. And like I said, dude, I had this 2-mile walk. I had a 2-mile walk of shame back to my buddy's house off Perkins where, I mean, I'm telling you, it's a shit. Like, I mean, I got called every single
but why? But why? It's a football game. It's not a reflection on your character that your team didn't win any more than it's a reflection on your character if your team does win. It's out of control, man. I mean, I don't know, and I know it's part of the shtick with a lot of the websites and stuff, and I realize I'm doing the old man yelling at clouds thing right now. I get it. That's no fun to me. I don't even understand how that's fun. I wouldn't want to and you see people with like little kids with them, and they're having to decide what to do. I mean, it's like you said, you did the right thing. I mean, you weren't going to win having a fight. Even if you win the fight, you're not going to win having a fight. So you just have to take it and go on, but you shouldn't have to take it. You should be able to walk out of a football stadium that you paid to enter peacefully. I mean, that's just simple as that. I mean, I'm just being. And when people do it just means more. Well, then maybe it just means too much. Maybe it means way too much to you. Maybe you should, I don't know, get a life. Maybe you should take a good hard look in them. And if alcohol does that much to you, then maybe
you just brought up the point.
Then you should stop drinking. If alcohol makes you an absolute belligerent asshole, stop drinking.
Yeah, that's the thing with it.
I have no sympathy. It's out of control.
Yeah, it's just the all-day drinking thing. They just get so hammered by the time those games start.
Well, then you shouldn't
do it. One that made me laugh was a guy jumping out of his car to scream at me about being a traitor to the state of Louisiana. And I found that kind of fun. I thought that was kind of funny.
I've gotten the traitor. I remember getting that in high school when I left Louisiana. I was a traitor. I've had that here with not sending kids to Mississippi schools. People are nuts, man. I mean, people are insane. And most people, here's the thing. Most people are really nice. Most people are really kind. And most people are really gracious. And most people have it in perspective. But man, it's that percentage of the people that don't. When it gets just a little too high, it really changes the mood around a place. And LSU used to always kind of be fun. It was always, in the past, to me, it always seemed more playful than anything else. And I was like, okay, that's fine. It's part of their shtick, you know. But now it feels like it's nasty. And it's like, I don't know what that's about. Anyway, they won. They've got a big game this week. We'll talk about LSU, Texas A&M in a minute. I've seen LSU play 2 weeks in a row right now. I do think this about LSU, the football team. I think Brian Kelly's doing a really good job with this team, and I think they're improving week over week over week over week. I thought they were explosive offensively against Arkansas. With this Tradez Green moving him to receiver was a game changer for them.
Yeah, no, Blake Baker, they paid him $2.5 million. He's the highest paid assistant in the country to leave from Missouri to LSU. He's worth every penny and more. Because, like, you look at how little NFL talent is on that defense and the way they've improved. We saw at the start of the year that Whit Weeks kid at linebacker. No, they're playing well. I mean, there's no getting around it. And I went against LSU and took Arkansas as a home dog. And I'm friends with LSU OC Joe Sloan, and he texts me at 1 a.m. He's like, "That's what you get for going against us." I was like, I thought that was pretty funny.
I had LSU laying the points. I got that one. All right, let's get into some games. We'll run through some college games. We'll get to the NFL slate. There's an interesting Friday night game to me. It's Boise State at UNLV. The Broncos giving 3 to the Rebels in Vegas. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that one's going to be really fun. I kind of think the over. Boise's got the really good running game, and UNLV can score some points. So I kind of think, we saw how wild that Syracuse-UNLV game got on a Friday night a couple weeks ago. I know Boise does run the ball, so that kind of shortens it. But I could see this one having some fireworks. Boise's the better team in the Mountain West, but, man, Barry Odom's done a really good job. So I think I'm leaning the over. Did you see – I'll be honest, I forgot who won. I'll just hand up. Did you see who won the UNLV-Oregon State game last week?
I did not.
Okay, well, if UNLV lost, I'm going to bounce back, but I probably need to look that up. I just remember it was late at night, and I didn't see who won it. So
yeah, your boy was pretty checked out last week. I was sort of detoxing from social media and of all types, and I didn't see much. I did get back to the hotel and watched the end of Georgia, Texas, and that was about the extent of it.
Yeah, that one I kind of called the Texas thing was out of control. I was right on that one. I just thought that the Texas hype was just, it was like Oklahoma and Michigan can't throw forward passes. And we're winning the team number 1 in the country because they stop teams that can't. I don't know.
Listen, I have a rule. If you give me Georgia and points, I'm taking it.
I think that's a very fair rule.
I mean, period.
And, I just that was a really good statement. I'm looking up this game. I'm trying to make this really quick, but I want to know who won this game.
No, you're good.
Pack. Where's it? Yes, because I need to see because if you see UNLV lost, I'm taking them. If it's a bounce back, all right. UNLV Oregon State. I'm trying to make UNLV won 33-25. All right, I have no opinion other than the over. That's what I got.
Okay. All right, let's jump into it. Ole Miss entertains Oklahoma on Saturday, 11 a.m. The Rebels, as of this moment, are a 20-point favorite. Oklahoma is a plus 800 money line pick. The over-under on this, and I'll be honest, I don't hate the under here, is 49. Ole Miss is a minus 1350 money line. Wow. Vegas very clearly believes Ole Miss is going to win. All right, Ben, I'll tell you, I think the number's too big.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing I've noticed, and this is a thing, and I had to talk with my boss, old ESPN Baton Rouge boss, Gordy Rush, about this the Friday night before the LSU game. Nobody in the SEC is covering big numbers at all, hardly. I mean, it is doubled, Vandy beat Bama, won at Kentucky, Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, Florida, went to OT with Tennessee. These big dogs are covering like crazy right now. And so I'm a little hesitant on the 20. You warned me about the over in the LSU game, and a lot of points were left out, but you were ultimately right. The thing on this matchup, Oklahoma's offensive line stinks. And you're playing the wrong defensive front if you can't block, period.
Yep.
And when you look at this Ole Miss front with Pegues and Ivy and Walter Nolan, if you're bad up front, you're playing the wrong team. And so I don't see how Oklahoma could score a lot of points. I'm hoping for an Ole Miss breakout, but I would lean under. I'm actually looking. I looked at the props. If there's a Bentley rushing prop that comes out by Saturday, I'm on the over because I think he's going to get more carries off that LSU game, and I think you're finally going to see that. And so I'm really hoping I can get something there because I feel like we may be looking at a timeshare going forward.
That would make a lot of people happy. That's a weird story. It's
a weird. The whole thing's
on a team full of some pretty weird stories. That's a weird one. Georgia Tech getting 10 at Virginia Tech. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, so Georgia Tech last week, I was bummed on this because Haynes King, their quarterback, has been really good. He was out last week with an upper body injury, and that backup just couldn't take care of the football. They would have fought. If Haynes King would have played, they would have had a chance to win that Notre Dame game, but that backup just turned the ball over too much, and they ended up getting blown out. If Haynes King plays, maybe I look at Georgia Tech. If he's out, no chance in hell, and his status hadn't been announced yet.
Arkansas heads to Mississippi State. All right. Help me with this line. Arkansas loses by 24 to LSU. Mississippi State's playing better. They're not winning, but they're playing better. They're playing competitive. They're covering lines. Mississippi State's getting 6.5 at home. Mississippi State's a plus 190, 180, 190 underdog. Arkansas is a minus 230 money line pick. The over-under on this is 58. I don't know that I hate the over. It kind of feels like a rat line to me. Jeffrey Wright and I were talking about this. He sort of thinks the same thing. It feels like they're begging you to take Mississippi State in the points, and I kind of don't hate Arkansas here.
Well, the thing with this matchup is State's run defense sucks. And you're playing a bad team with the Arkansas. They've got a good, Jackson's a really good running back. Taylor Green can run. And so that matchup concerns me. But on the other hand, State's playing hard, and State's actually kind of gotten the better of them in this series lately, too. So I think I'm leaning over with you because I think State will score points, and they run that up tempo, and I think Arkansas is going to run the ball. So I think I'm honestly fine taking over in almost any State game right now with Levy.
Yeah, they're scoring points for sure. Missouri heads to Alabama in a game that I don't know that people nationally are talking enough about. And it may be because everyone just knows both of these teams are going to get eliminated eventually. But the loser of this game is done. Missouri doesn't have the resume if they lose to Alabama, even at 10-2 to get in. And an Alabama loss would be loss number 3. The loser of this is toast. And yet nobody's really talking about it. Missouri getting 13.5. The over-under is 53.
Well, okay, so the thing on this, you just heard my speech about not laying double digits in SEC games. My instincts think this is the Bama ass whipping. I mean, I just really think Missouri's soft from what I've seen. They look soft up front. They hadn't looked good at all year. A&M blew them off the ball completely when Missouri was off the bye week. And just watching Missouri, I mean, they beat Vandy in OT. I don't know. I just don't think they're very good. And so the only thing –
I'll tell you this, Ben. I don't either, but everybody keeps saying this about Alabama, and here comes the Alabama. That guy's not walking through the door.
No, I mean, I'm Bama or nothing, but it's just hard to lay double digits when all these double-digit underdogs keep covering. But I just think Missouri's bad. And I don't think Bama's like elite. But I think Missouri's the most fraudulent team in the SEC, what they're supposed to be.
Speaking of big lines, Illinois, 1 loss. They head to Oregon, getting 21 in Eugene.
Tell you what, Luke Altmaier, let's have a moment to be happy for this guy because everybody loved him in the locker room at Ole Miss. Remember, he was battling dark for the starting job a couple of years ago. From a good family, good Mississippi dude. Love seeing him make good. I mean, beats Michigan. They have, 1 loss to Penn State? I think that's their only loss. Just good for him, I just want to say that. I'm just happy for his success.
Same.
Having said that, Oregon's really, really, really hot right now. And going there is tough. I don't know if they can keep up. So I don't know if I want to lay 21, but I don't necessarily like Illinois here either.
BYU getting 2 at UCF.
This is an interesting one. I got burned going against UCF up in Ames, Iowa last week. I thought that was a game they'd get blown out. BYU, they were 12-1 to win the Big 12 a couple weeks ago. Now it's down to 5 or 6-1. I mean, they're the better team, but this is one of those cross-country travel weird deals. So I'm inclined to stay away and think UCF might pull this out. But, I'm not going to bet on it.
Texas, coming off their loss to Georgia. They have to head to Nashville, completely different environment. Vandy beat Ball State. They were kind of flat, like you thought they would be. Didn't cover the big number. I thought that was free money last week. Ball State plus 25.5. But Vandy won the game. Vandy can clinch, I guess, what can they get to 6-2 with a win? Vandy is
I guess they lost at Missouri and at Georgia State.
Yeah, they're 5-2. They can get their 6th win with a win over Texas. They're getting 19 points. Any shot at all for the Doors?
There's a shot. The only thing that concerns me, and I always say this, everybody's going to be on this Vandy thing this week now because Texas just lost and looked bad. And so I feel like Vandy is going to be the public home dog that everybody takes, And a lot of times those home underdogs, you got to be looking for what people don't see. But having said that, Vandy plus 7-1 money line,
I know it's
I
a
mean,
plus 700 money line. I mean, damn.
I mean, if $30 wins 210, even if Texas kills them, are you even mad? So I think I'll probably just take the money line small at year forward, but I don't know that I expect them to win.
Our Warhawks head to South Alabama to play USA, the Jags, ULM. Got a chance to. What was this? Be 6-1?
Yeah, bowl eligible. I've only been one bowl ever, and I got to hang out with Brian. I interviewed him on my show, and then I actually hung out with him in the suite on the Thursday night in the Superdome last week. Man, awesome dude, just like really good guy, and he's changed the whole culture. I would lean ULM in the points. They got the right quarterback in there now. They got this New Mexico transfer who's a lot better than General Booty. They're physical. They're tough. They play hard. So, I would lean them in the points. They're off a bye. And I'll go ahead and tell you this right now, Neal. Start the tailgate for ULM Auburn next week, because if ULM beats you, freeze, just start it. And Vincent from Alabama, I brought it up to him in the suite. I was like, man, if you beat Hugh Freeze in that Auburn game.
Ben, I'm on camera. I don't need to get all aroused right here on.
That's what I'm saying.
Much. That's too much. It's too much to think about. It's makes me lightheaded.
I know, me too. So that one, but yeah, I'd lean ULM in the points off a bye. They're fired up, and he used to coach South Alabama. So
I'm telling you, if ULM goes to Auburn and wins, I am driving to Monroe and buying jerseys. I walk into the damn stadium and go, how much? What do I need? What do you want? I
can't wait to see that game. Like I told him that. I'm like, I didn't want to, he's obviously worried about South Alabama. I'm like, man, I'm already tailgating for this ULM Auburn game.
November 16th, and I think Ole Miss is off that day.
Yeah, they are. That's between Georgia and Florida.
Oh, I'm sure I've got something to do, and my wife would kill me, but boy, it'd be tempting to go to Auburn and sit in this ULM section.
Yeah, I know.
Wouldn't that be amazing? I'd love to be a part of that party.
Oh man, yeah. I'm actually going to try to go I'm doing the Black Friday Egg Bowl, and then I'm going to try to make it to Monroe for the ULM game that Saturday Thanksgiving weekend. I feel like I got to support them.
Oh, I might do that too.
I think it's going to be an afternoon game. We'll see. The ULM Grove's going to be rocking. They've got their little Grove tailgate.
They got 23,000 people at the Troy game.
Oh yeah, no, they're partying. So what they're doing is the end zones are have tents and they party, and then the sky boxes are full. The stands don't look the best, but supposedly they're turning up in Monroe. There's some enthusiasm.
How about that? Well, good for them. Who would have ever thought before the season that Miami would be a 21-point favorite over Florida State?
Man, yeah, this Miami thing though. All right, here's a stat. They're 3-0 the last 3 weeks, and they've allowed 116 points. That is bananas. Their defense, you watch them on TV, it is jarring how slow Miami is on defense. You watch them, and you're like, what is going on? No one can run. How do you have all these slow guys at the U? I don't understand. They cannot. They are so slow on defense. But the thing is, can Florida State score? Cam Ward will still be really good, but it's a rivalry game. And those games historically, you don't want to take huge favorites in them. Miami obviously will run it up if they can, but I don't know. I ain't taking Miami laying 21 here. No way.
Penn State, we'll jump through a few. Penn State goes to Wisconsin. The Nittany Lions laying 6.5.
I still don't know if I believe in Penn State. They're ranked number 3. I know they made the good Kansas offensive coordinator hire, but they should have lost to USC a couple weeks ago. They played a weak schedule. I know Wisconsin's playing a lot better, but they've been playing a weak schedule. But I still think I'd lean Wisconsin in the points here. I think there's a lot of worlds where Penn State wins by 3 again here. I think that's a kind of likely outcome.
SEC game of the week, LSU goes to College Station. The Tigers getting 2.5. Over under on this, 53.5.
There's so much on this one. All right. A&M's tough as hell at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. That scored, the Purdue transfer might be the best defensive player in the SEC. They have the leading rusher. And I think the thing about LSU here, as good as they've been playing the last few weeks, I was told like Ole Miss at Arkansas at A&M. If you go 2-1, you're thrilled, and they've won 2 in a row. They have momentum. My instinct's sort of like A&M here, just because it's their third tough game in a row, and it's their second road game in a row. Also, what do you think about the under here? I mean, I think LSU's playing better defense, and then A&M kind of likes to play more unders because they run the ball and play D. It's like 53.
Yeah, 53
and
a half.
I kind of think I lean under here.
Yeah.
Even Nuss is good.
27-24 game kind of game. That would get you under. And it kind of feels like where we're headed.
Mm-hmm. That's what I kind of think, physical game.
And I don't think LSU wants to play shootouts. I think LSU wants to have.
They don't. No, they don't. They don't. They really don't. They're not. I know you think of them up-tempo, but I think they're being balanced. And like I said, man, Blake Baker, dude deserves the money.
I lean LSU. There's something about they have the more consistent quarterback. Weigman, when he's good, is really good. He's just not always really good.
The other thing too is I know historically it's like, what does the past matter versus the future? Because the NIL world, but man, LSU's really gotten the best A&M through the years. I mean, this has been a series. I think A&M's beat them like twice in 12 years or something. I mean, it's not a historically good situation. I'm betting under. Not betting and not taking the line.
The game that nobody but a mom can love. Auburn goes to Kentucky. The Wildcats laying 2.5 to the Reverend Freeze.
I don't know whatever the over under is. I lean the under. I just think this is going to be ugly.
43.
I know it's not 43. That's low. I just think this is ugly, man. Auburn, just the offense is bad. Kentucky will play hard on defense, and I just think like we saw 21-17 Missouri beat Auburn. I think we're looking at another something like that.
Oh, put Auburn on quit watch soon. I know.
ULM game, man. I'm telling you. You saw Freeze lose to New Mexico. It could happen.
Hey. Oh, just the thought makes me so happy. That's really Cincinnati getting 5.5 at Colorado.
Like over there, 57. Cincinnati's got a little better offense than people think, and Colorado can sling it around. So
any college games that I missed that you like?
Man, not really. It's the board wasn't singing to me too much. So that was about I think you got most of it.
All right, we got the Thursday night game in the NFL. Minnesota laying 2.5 at the Rams. The Vikings just win.
They do just win, and there wasn't really any shame in that loss to Detroit last week. That was a great game. Two really, really good
That was
games.
A really good game.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to be hang your hat about. That's their first loss. They lost to an elite team by 2 at home. The Vikings. I'll tell you one thing to watch in the NFL, and it's been really hurting my wallet. I'm a home underdog believer, and I've been doing it for years. I always take underdogs. The road favorites are 12-1 against the spread in the last 13. Oh. Like that's every sucker that bets the public side's just crushing it. And so someone like me that's like always fading, like trying to take the opposite thing, just gets cooked when that happens. But having said that, the only thing, the Vikings probably should win, but that 2.5 line's a little ratty. Also, McVay, O'Connell was McVay's old OC, and, there's some kind of coaching stuff with that. But Minnesota's a better team. Short week on the road. I'm either Minnesota or stay away.
Huge line here. The Titans suck. Lions are very good, but 11 points in Detroit. That's a bunch, man.
I know. And I just I don't ever like taking double-digit favorites in the NFL. But last week I was on Tennessee +9 at Buffalo, and they were up 10-0, and then Buffalo just scores 34 unanswered, and I just get smoked in that game. This is probably a stay away. Jameson Williams suspended a couple weeks, but shouldn't matter because Detroit's got so many other weapons. It seems like Detroit's really, really got it rolling right now. But if it was under 10, maybe I'd take Detroit. But I just don't like that.
Another big line, but a game that they should handle is Baltimore -8.5 at Cleveland. Cleveland now without Deshaun Watson, they're going to. I forgot it. Jameis Winston. Jameis.
I like the over here. Baltimore is, Lamar's been on fire. He just had 5 touchdowns on Monday night. And then here's the thing. Jameis Winston is an over quarterback. He's going to throw it to both teams. And so those picks can swing games like crazy toward the over. And I also think Jameis very likely to be chunking it in garbage time, getting some empty yards. So I'm going to go over 44.5 as long as the weather's fine. Sometimes the games, if there's bad weather in Cleveland, everything's off.
Green Bay at Jacksonville, the Pack laying 4 on the road.
We need to have a talk about nobody's talking about Green Bay. Everybody's talking about Detroit, Minnesota. This Green Bay team is freaking great. They made an awesome defensive coordinator hire, bringing in Jaggers, whatever his name was, the Boston College head coach, the long name. They got rid of Joe Barry. Their pass rush is really good. Jordan Love's playing well. They got weapons. LaFleur's a good coach. I mean, I feel like Green Bay is a Super Bowl contender, and nobody's talking about it right now at all. And the way Jacksonville has been playing, especially on 3rd and long and stuff, I feel like Lawrence can make some mistakes in Green Bay. Even with being a road favorite, you got to think they're way the better team here.
Yeah, I agree with you. Colts are playing well. This is two teams that right now would make the playoffs. The Colts go to Houston. The Colts get 5 in NRG.
What's this locker room got to be like going with Richardson? I mean, I get he's the first-round pick, but when Flacco's out there, they score 20 more points a game.
I know all Flacco does is play well and win. I mean, how do you do
Richardson
this?
can't throw their passes.
I mean,
they won 16-10 last week, and it was just ugly and brutal. And
I don't know. I don't know how you do that in an NFL locker room where you can't trick those guys. They're like, hey, the old guy knows how to get it done. And you go to the kid, and yeah, he does some explosive things, and you got a bunch of money in him, but damn, I'm with you.
Yeah. Houston's been real weird about playing all these close games. The only game they blew anybody out was at New England. But it seems like if C.J. Stroud was ever going to go nuclear, it'd be at home against Indy. I saw a stat on C.J. Stroud. Neal, NFL career, he averages 310 yards in home games and 211 on the road. Pretty wild split there. So I kind of feel like I like Houston with Richardson going.
Okay. Jets go to New England. The Jets laying 7 on the road.
These Jets power ranking is wild. How are they laying 3 in Pittsburgh last week? They're 2-4. Pittsburgh, Tomlin never doesn't win as an underdog.
And it's 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. It's not 30-year-old Aaron Rodgers. And, dude, it shows.
I know they killed New This is one of those that's a stay away, but if I had to do anything, it'd be New England +7.
Big game here. Fun game. Eagles today would not make the playoffs. The Bengals today would not make the playoffs. Yet it's 2 pretty good teams. Cincinnati laying 2 at home against Philly.
I feel like I like over 48 here. This one could get kind of wild. The Bengals defense is, I know they played better a little bit the last couple of weeks, but I still have questions. A.J. Brown back for Philly makes such a huge difference. We saw him catch a long touchdown last week. And look, Burrow and Chase are cooking right now. Yeah. They're hot. So I think this could be like kind of a wild, fun game to the end that could go either way. So I'm going to take that over.
NFC South showdown. The Falcons go to Tampa. Atlanta laying 2.5 on the road.
Okay. This Todd Bowles thing. Did you see him? They were down 41-18. And you leave your starters out there the other night when you have Atlanta and a game for the top of the NFC South. When Chris Godwin went down with that broken ankle with 40 seconds left, that was hard to watch, man. I mean, you already had Evans out. Why the hell was he out there in that game? That was just unbelievable.
Siski was defending this, but I'm wondering the more I hear about it if this isn't just a defend the coaches thing. Coaches defending coaches. A lot of coaches, and hey, Lane Kiffin's one of these coaches. A lot of coaches have a hard time waving the white flag. And sometimes discretion has to be the better part of valor. I'll always remember this game. It was 2022. Ole Miss is at Arkansas, and it's 42-6 midway through the third quarter. Ole Miss was 5 days away from playing Mississippi State. And in a game that would be the difference between the Texas Bowl or like one of the Florida Bowls. And Lane couldn't let it go. And I say that kind of through gritted teeth, And Ole Miss fought and played and fought and played, and they won the last 15 to 17 minutes of that game 21-0. Final was 42-27. Nobody remembers the 21-0. You just get the L. And in that doing it, they ran 90-something offensive plays, and 5 nights later, they looked tired. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
No, I agree. I just don't think how, Bowles said in the postgame, he was like, well, we only have 4 healthy receivers, so we had him out there. Like, dude, Evans is going to be out a while. You can't risk that. Now you're playing the game for the top of the NFC South without Evans or Godwin. I know this is crazy, but I like the under a lot. They played a 36-30 game a couple weeks ago. But Tampa without Evans and Godwin is going to be running the ball. They're not going to be explosive. And like Atlanta, although their offense has been good, they're not the same outdoors. Like Cousins is not the same playing outside. So I actually kind of like under a good bit of here.
Under 46 for Mintz here. All right, Cardinals head to across the country to Miami. Arizona getting 3.5 in Southern.
Tua back. Can Tua stay healthy? I like Miami with Tua going, and I think there's a chance that people are sleeping on the Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, A-Chain. This could be the game Miami comes out and scores in the high 30s if Tua can stay healthy. So I like Miami. The only thing with Miami, though, it's like, I mean, you take them and then Tua goes down again, Yeah. I mean, you feel like it's a risk, but I like Miami here.
Buffalo goes across the country to Seattle. The Bills, a 3-point road favorite.
This one's tough because what a brutal trip this is for Buffalo. They're kind of they've been playing better. Josh Allen, no interceptions. Pretty impressive. 0 interceptions so far this year. But Seattle plus 3. I'd slightly lean the home dog here. Just that's such a long trip. Seattle just got a big win against Atlanta. I think they'll fight here.
Your Saints head across the country as well. They head to L.A. to play the Chargers. New Orleans, a 7-point dog.
This thing should be 14, boys. I mean, I hate to say it. I never bet against the Saints, and I never bet against Ole Miss because some things are worth more than money. However, if you bet a lot of money against the Chargers, would be my game of the week if they weren't playing the Saints. Because the Saints, there's a point, Neal. Everybody's dealing with injuries. I get it. It's excuses. People got 4 or 5 starters out. But when you got 9 of 11 out, including 3 offensive linemen, your best 2 receivers, Taysom Hill, and your quarterback, there's a point where you can't lose any more bodies, and they're out. They're out. And now on defense, they've given up because they know they have no hope. And the Chargers are going to come out and win this game like 27-6. I mean, they're going to dominate. And I think J.K. Dobbins is a big game, and the Chargers just roll here. And I'll say this. Saints are 2-5. I don't know if they win more than 2 more games the rest of the year.
Wow.
I think it's that bad. It's that bad.
Couple of 10-point lines here. The Chiefs head to Vegas. Chiefs laying 10 on the road against the Raiders. The Panthers go to Denver. The Panthers getting 10 on the road.
I can't lay the 10 with the Chiefs because all they want to do is win. And I know they won the big game at the Niners, but they just never blow people out, and they never care about covering the spread at all. They just win and do just enough to win all the time. So I would be Vegas or nothing there because of that. The Denver thing, Carolina gets their ass beat every week. And I think Dalton might be out. They might be going with Bryce. Yeah, it's just Denver. Denver just killed the Saints. They should win. So, God, how do you lay more than 7 with Bo Nix, though? I mean, how do you do it? I know they just blew the Saints.
The NFL's weird this year, man. It's weird. All right, 2 teams. Before the season, nobody thought anything of them. It's the Bears, the Commanders. They both would be playoff teams today, I think. The Bears, a 2.5-point road underdog, road favorite in Washington. I guess there's questions about Jaden Daniels' availability.
Oh, there definitely is, because if Jaden Daniels is playing, Washington's a full 3 here. That's how much he matters to the spread. But they're going with Mariota. I like the under if Mariota plays. Just period. They're going to try to run the ball. It's going to be a low scoring, just kind of grindy physical game. So if Jaden Daniels is out, I'm on the under. Period.
43.5 is the over under. Dallas goes to San Francisco. This needs to be a bounce back moment for the Niners after the Chiefs debacle. 49ers laying 4 at home against Dallas.
That Brock Purdy game was rough, wasn't it? Man, tough scene. Dallas has kind of got this weird, like they're good on the road and stink at home thing going. They're undefeated on the road so far this year, and they just keep getting demolished at home. Having said that, though, I can't go against the Niners. I know the Niners are 3-4, but it's just the professionalism in that organization just makes it where I lean San Francisco. I just think they're – and also, let's talk about this. Watch out for Jordan Mason. Dallas has like 4 defensive ends hurt. I know a couple are supposed to come back, but their run defense has just been, an abomination. And you're playing the wrong team if you can't stop the run.
All right, we got one last game, the Monday night game. It is the New York Football Giants. They head to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. The Steelers laying 6.5.
I think is this game in Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Or in New York? Okay. God, it's just one of those things where it's like these times, like you just instincts you'd say, "Oh, Pittsburgh's going to kill the Giants."
It's the big number.
But actually, no, I like the other side. The thing is, it's a very simple thing. When Pittsburgh's favored, bet against them, and when they're an underdog, take them. Tomlin is just such a ferocious underdog, but they struggle in these like ugly games they're supposed to win. So I'm going to take New York.
Yeah, these are the games that win by 3 points.
Yeah, Russell Wilson, he had a really good game Sunday night, but like I'm still not convinced. I'm sorry. I got to see more. I don't know.
What you got this weekend?
I'm chilling up here, so it's fun. We got this Ole Miss Chicago crew that watches games at the Theory Bar across from the Barstool Bar. I went there for AM last year, and I went there for a game, the South Carolina game. So I'll be up there for that. And now I'm pumped. We're doing the Barstool show, Georgia Ole Miss weekend, so I'll be in Oxford for that and the Black Friday Egg Bowl. So, I need a weekend off the road, though, because I did the New Orleans thing like really big the last couple weekends, so we got to kind of pump the brakes a little bit.
I hear you. All right, Benjamin, I appreciate your time as always. I look forward to talking to you next week. We'll get ready for Ole Miss at Arkansas and everything else on the slate. Thanks for the time.
Hey, always. Appreciate it.
Our thanks to Blake Toppmeyer, Ben Mintz, and Eddie Radosevich for their time on the show today. The show, again, brought to you by our friends at Rustic Revivals Furniture Company. Don't forget, go to rusticrevivalsms.com, enter the promo code Rebels20 and get 20% off your purchase. They do incredible work at Rustic Revivals. You should check out some of their stuff on Facebook or Instagram, get a look at what they do, and then give them a call. Again, 228-217-1243. Full day of programming coming to you on MPW Digital, and of course, we'll have all of this to you in podcast form as well. If you're making the trip to Oxford for Oklahoma at Ole Miss, be careful, be safe, and we look forward to hopefully entertaining you on your drive up and home. We'll have the MPW Digital postgame show brought to you by Realtree right after the game on Saturday, and we'll put that in podcast form as well. So again, safe travels. Thanks for being here with us on MPW. If you are on YouTube, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you are listening on podcast, Spotify, Apple, whatever the case may be, please hit the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Hit 5 stars, even if you want to say bad things about us, that'll be fine. Just hit 5 stars. That helps us quite a bit. So until next time, take care.